sort of like, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes saying, you all run out there and somebody catch the ball. It's just not a good plan, and it's definitely not repeatable. Even if you are Patrick Mahomes, it's still not repeatable and smart to just say, y'all run out there and somebody catch the ball. It doesn't normally work out in the end.
Well, I think what you're saying, though, too, is sometimes people don't see the structure. It's the structure that allows them to, when they have to, I'm in Kansas City, so I like that you brought up Mahomes.
Yeah.
But
I knew you would.
But so when they have to, Mahomes can say, hey, Kelsey, get open. I'm going to hit you.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it's the structure in the background
Yes.
that lets them get to a point where they can call that audible, where they can go do something creative on the fly. They couldn't do that if all the other stuff weren't in place.
Right.
Welcome to the News Nirvana podcast. I'm your host, Nick Parker. The News Nirvana podcast features conversations with media professionals from across the country, highlighting our ever-evolving business models and showcasing the strong and effective journalism produced each and every day. This podcast is made possible to you by the generosity of Blocks Digital. Blocks Digital empowers content producers to connect with their worldwide audiences at scale and continuously transform to achieve their business goals. Contact Blocks Digital today to learn more about how they can help you thrive. Connect with them at blocksdigital.com.
Hello, welcome back to the News Nirvana podcast. I am your host, Nick Parker. With me today, this is like back-to-back repeat guests on the News Nirvana podcast.
Nice.
I don't know that I've ever done that before, but Ryan Dohrn, the founder, president of Brain Swell Media. Ryan, welcome back.
Hey, thanks so much. We had just a great conversation last time, all kinds of good feedback about the podcast and everything. So glad to be back. Thanks so much.
I think that was actually one of my favorite episodes that we've done of this one. And I think
Awesome.
It came at the right time. I like many of the people, I run a small local news organization.
Mm-hmm.
It's just me. Well, actually, that's not true. Since then, Ryan, I have added a salesperson.
How about that? Awesome.
I know. So,
Awesome.
But it was at the right time where my biggest difficulty is the sales side.
Sure.
I grew up editorial. I've had to learn and adapt. But it's the harder thing for me. I really have to change my headspace to think that way. And let's be honest, I'm scared of it.
Understand.
Sales frightens me.
It-
But it was the right time, and I hope that it was as good for other people as it was for me, because
that's awesome. That's a life goal of mine as well, in personal relationships as well as in the business side of things. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really specifically wanted you back this time, and again, it's a little bit of selfishness, but I like to think that, hey, if I'm having these questions, or someone I know is having these questions, others are too.
Right.
So it's a good way to kind of seek out topics, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about leadership, about managing a sales team and getting that together, and also just about being a manager, right? That is a hard thing, and the reason I thought of you is a friend of mine has just hired someone, and they are a first-time manager.
Wow. Okay.
And so struggling a little bit with the, he's excited about the talent and the potential there, but there's a lot of those first-time manager mistakes happening, learning to delegate, learning to, okay, just because this is what I did doesn't mean it'll work for you, and finding strengths and weaknesses and putting people in position to succeed. And I think we can get into all of those, but I kind of wanted to start off just kind of that mindset part of it, of the brain of a sales manager, and kind of where you work with people to start off on that.
Right. No, it makes sense. So what I first like to share with folks, and this happens on a moderately regular basis, because what happens is people get promoted. Your circumstance of your friend is a little different, but as people get promoted, unfortunately, what happens a lot is that the number one salesperson gets asked to then be the sales manager. Right. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to do everything opposite of what this previous person did. And then sometimes that's not the best scenario. So here's what I tell folks, kind of 3 steps. The experiences that you create for your team member or members, those experiences drive the beliefs that they have in you, in the company, in the product. So experiences drive beliefs. Those beliefs directly impact the actions that the salesperson or team member is going to take on your behalf or the company's behalf. So if you follow that 3-step process, this is kind of how it plays out. If you create negative or bad experiences, very often then the team member will then have negative or unpopular beliefs in you or the company. Then their actions end up being pretty negative as well. It's very rare that you create a negative experience with negative beliefs and then get positive actions. It just doesn't make normal sense. Now, what you can do is think about it from this perspective. When you create positive experiences, people have positive beliefs in you or the company, and then normally those actions are going to be positive as well. What's really strange about all of this, and then I'll pause to get your thoughts on this. What's strange is that I recently was working with a media company in the middle of the United States, and I walked into the kind of bullpen sales area, and everybody was laughing, and they were having, seems like they were having kind of a joyous occasion or whatever it was. This media manager said to me, "Oh, sounds like they need more to do. They're out there laughing." And I said, "Or they're enjoying their time at work." And so when you think about these experiences and these beliefs and these actions, it's not that hard to set yourself up for success. The problem is most people just don't kind of have a path to follow. So that'd be one of the first things that I would love for you to consider about your salesperson, and then also your friends and colleagues that you meet as well. That's kind of the first grouping of information.
Yeah, and I feel like, and sorry to interrupt there.
No, you're good.
I feel like you're talking about office culture a little bit. And that's a weird I didn't plan on going here, but you brought it up and it makes me think that's a weird conversation. I think the last 5, 6 years, where there's almost a debate of what that means and whether that's a good thing. And I think some of that is generational, right? Like old managers who were very kind of, they sat up here, right?
Yeah.
And they look down and see everybody having fun. That the first instinct is exactly what you said. Hey, they're not busy.
Right.
They're having too much fun. But I think what you're talking about is, well, or we've created a great work environment and they love what they're doing.
Right.
They are acting as a team.
Yeah. Some managers see somebody smiling or somebody laughing or somebody not at their cubicle, and they think, you need to get back to work. What's interesting though is the remote culture that a lot of us are working in. I've been remote now for, going on almost 20 years. And do I miss being with people and miss kind of the water cooler conversations, who won the football game kind of thing? And the answer is absolutely yes. So it is a little bit harder in a remote gig kind of environment to continue to create culture that makes sense. It just is a little bit harder because people are kind of right in front of you. But I don't think company culture is dead or the conversation is dead. Not that you said that, as much as I feel like it's a lot of work. And what's happening is everybody's trying to work smarter and not harder. And I tell people all the time, good luck with that. Because in the media business, you need to be ridiculously smart. You need to work ridiculously hard and realize that you need to embrace the grind. Sales is a grind. And it's sort of like you've heard people say that, like the Marines, they embrace the suck. They embrace what's the worst. In sales, if we embrace the grind, but as managers, if we really make people understand the grind is a part of what we do, but let's celebrate when the grind is done, because the results come in, we can actually create a remote or in-person culture that's quite positive. But what we don't want to see is just people saying, you know what, just go do whatever you want to do, and hopefully the results come in. That really is not a great way to manage people. But I would share this with you. It is a little heady, like it's a headspace thing to think about. But in your personal life, in raising your kids, in dealing with your mother-in-law, whatever it is, the experiences you create drive the beliefs people have, and those beliefs drive the actions that people have. And if we can understand that kind of basic concept and overwhelm people with positivity and things like that, we almost always have more successful teams.
You used the word grind there several times. And again, I think that's kind of an interesting cultural, societal shift.
Yep.
We don't like that word as much anymore. as we used to. A friend of mine is a serial entrepreneur, and his thing is always hustle hard, right?
Yep.
It seems like we try to avoid that a little bit as we try to, as you said, work smarter. I
Right.
also think that the social media landscape of everybody talking about passive income.
Yes, exactly. Everybody's got a hustle, a side hustle. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Like,
I do too.
you got to have a hard grind before you can achieve that passive income thing, right?
Yep.
That's
Yep.
a reward.
Yes.
That's not a
Yep.
start out thing.
Right.
But so I guess what's that conversation of, especially as we bring in newer salespeople, members of our team, because
Yep.
you and I talked about a little of this off air, but we're in a weird time where we've got about 5 generations of people basically working together from boomers down to Generation Z.
Yep.
So as you're bringing that in, those new people in, how are you talking about grinding?
Right. So let's talk about older Gen Zers, the Zoomers. So we have Zoomers coming in, and we got Boomers going out the other side, right? And then we got Millennials caught in the middle. My Millennial clients have taught me so much. But something to remember.
I agree. I feel like we give them a hard time.
Oh gosh.
I really like what I see.
Right. Well, look what happened during the Great Recession, the Great Resignation, and look what happened during COVID. What did the Millennial age group do better than anybody else that's out there? They got let go. They grinded. They got side hustles. Every Millennial I know has some type of side hustle. Why are all these older people saying that Millennials don't work and don't get things done? It's not true. This is a generation of grind. They get it. Almost everybody has a side hustle. The Gen Zers have side hustles. They're always looking because they had to. They had to because they didn't want to go back to mom and dad's house in 2019. They didn't want to go back home. Now, some of them had to. I embraced a few of them in my home. It's not a big deal. But you can't say that this age group doesn't understand the grind. You just can't do it. So what's interesting is being able to change some management styles and thoughts of some older, if you will, managers that are out there or people that are getting new, recognize that this is a generation of grinders. They get it. They understand if they want to pay the bills, but it was a little bit out of necessity, though, right? They understand. I know some people have 3 and 4 side hustles.
Right.
And they embrace it. And I don't know that they love it, but they recognize that this is really how I'm going to get ahead. So I do think there's a conversation that needs to be had about there's 2 groups of people, young people and old people. And if you don't know what group you're in, you're old.
Right.
And it's okay. Embrace it.
Very true.
But I don't think it's fair for us to say any longer that Millennials or older Gen Zers, that they don't understand the grind, they don't want to work. I think what it is a lot of people that would be my age just not recognizing what actually is occurring, because I find that a lot of my friends just don't pay attention. They just don't pay attention to that generation.
Is this related to it? And you and I are of similar age. We don't have to be totally transparent.
I'm a little older,
Do you think that is related to so Gen X, us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are really the first, I think, in a few generations of, we're not necessarily going to have the same career our entire adult lives.
Correct. I think it's 11.
I'm
on
11
total. I think 11 is the average.
I'm look. I am almost to the fives. I'm gonna hit 50 in a few months. I'm on iteration 3 or 4.
Right. Yep.
And that's normal, but I wonder if that's related in the part of trying to understand how things are working now, and that you're not just going to go work for a news org and be a salesperson for 50 years.
Correct. And it's okay. It's also acceptable. So if you remember, perhaps when you were growing up in, just north of the Quad Cities in Iowa is where John Deere's big headquarters is at. I remember, and IBM had a huge headquarters there as well. I remember my dad saying to me when I was in my 20s, what you need to do, Ryan, is go down to the Quad Cities and go over to Moline, Illinois, and you need to apply for a job at John Deere in their corporate office or IBM, and you need to stay there for 25 years, and then you will retire. And guess what? With a big pension. Guess what? He was right. But my love was for the media business, and that's not how media typically works, because the way that you make more money is by working for bigger organizations in bigger markets. So I hopped around from the same area, the Quad Cities, ended up at the end of my career, so to speak, in Chicago. And it was just the it was just the nature of kind of how it is. Now it's a lot more acceptable for someone to have multiple jobs and even to change total careers. I recently met somebody on a flight, and you get into conversations like, "Hey, what do you do?" and all that kind of stuff. And I normally say that I'm a professional assassin. And I'm kind of laughing. And this lovely lady said to me, she said, "Well, I'm a brand new attorney," and my mind is spinning because I'm like, "Okay, you're a new attorney because you look older than me." And she's like, I just wanted to do something different. I just always kind of thought I'd be a good attorney and wanted to do this. But the societal norm was you're too old to be changing careers. I said, "So what are you thinking now, a year into it?" She said, "I just love it. It's the best decision I ever made. I should have done it 10 years ago." So it's a lot more accepted. And when you're looking at people's resumes, it used to be the more you had, the worse you were. Now, a lot of people look at that as, wow, what a depth and breadth of experience, which, is a good hiring conversation.
Yeah, and two, I mean, to kind of keep this about managerial,
Yeah.
I get curious, and sometimes I bounce too much.
You're okay. You're fine. I appreciate that.
To keep this, about managerial, right? Like, so you're hiring people too with different experiences, and you talked about,
Mhm.
an older person was just
Mhm.
became an attorney. I also host another show in the beer industry.
Okay, cool.
Just a week ago, interviewed somebody. She was a professional ballerina for 20 plus years and
Wow.
is now a brewer in Pittsburgh.
Nice.
We don't expect that shift often, right?
Yeah,
Like
that's a pretty seismic shift.
that threw me. But in speaking, the level of dedication to detail and to
Mhm.
a craft,
Yep.
also the artistic, part of it, the creative part of it, they still fit.
Yes.
Off the top of your head, you're like, well, that's a weird shift. How do those things match? And you talk to her, and it's like, oh, I get it.
Makes
I
perfect
totally
sense.
understand how your brain fits all of those things.
Right.
And so, to keep this kind of on our topic a little bit
Mhm.
of I guess that kind of as a manager embracing those things and finding how to help them exploit those experiences. Is
Uh,
exploit the right word there?
Yeah, no, I think that it really is, because when you look at a depth and breadth of experience in hiring salespeople, one of the things that I'm really looking for is, what jobs have you had where you needed to create great conversations with people in order to forward the sale or forward that conversation. That's why when you look at people that can create great conversations, like servers, for example, being a server in a restaurant is really great, because it gives you experience with the public, and you're forced to make great conversations, and those conversations directly impact your tip that you're going to get. So when I'm hiring folks, I'm looking for people that are great conversationalists, but I'm also looking for people with a background where they had to do things that required a lot of rehearsal and required a lot of practice. I've had great success hiring people that were in theater, in high school and college, and then go into sales. Great success with people that are in marching band, people that are dedicated to kind of a craft, like learning to play guitar or drums or whatever piano, whatever that circumstance is. When you look at understanding how to brew beer is an example. It's not something you just like read a book on. There's a depth and breadth of experience, unless you want bad beer, right? So as we're managing these people, I think it is important for us to draw on their depth and breadth of experience. But one of the biggest things beyond culture is, people typically crave structure and do well under structure. So when you're trying to manage folks, you want to look at their depth and breadth of experience, but then you also want to see, okay, what type of structure can we put this person in to potentially help them be the most and greatest success that they can be? So when you think about structure from a management perspective, I'm really not saying I'm going to look over your shoulder 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. However, what we may want to set up within our organizations is a structure like this. For example, you are going to spend a minimum of an hour and a half each day working on the prospecting piece of this business. And then within that prospecting piece, there's a structure. So there's a structure within the structure. So there's three main things that most salespeople need to do to be a raging success: book a lot of meetings, get to those meetings and close a lot of deals. And then the third thing is retain these customers for a lifetime. So that's the main structure. The substructure is, okay, prospecting. I need you to pick up the darn phone because we know it closes deals. I need you to send out highly relevant emails. Stop generically, mass emailing people. And then you need a time of day that makes sense dedicated to prospecting. For example, we know that if you prospect at 11 o'clock, most people are available because they don't book meetings before lunch, right? So these substructures of the greater structure, you'll find that people thrive under structure. Even like a person like me, I hate structure. It's like, oh, that's so boring.
I was cringing on this side.
Right. It's just like, but if you really think about the times in your life when you've actually been the most successful and gotten a lot done that day, it's normal because you had some type of structure or somebody driving it to that point. And the last thing I'll share on that, because we could get into the substructures of all these things,
Right.
is really to recognize that if you look at problem children, okay, and I don't have problem children, I've got two pretty darn good young men in our lives. The times when they were the most successful is the times that they were most structured. The reason I got into a lot of trouble, I just wasn't that structured. But then once I got involved in theater, I got involved in video production, I got involved in media. You have to be structured because you have deadlines. All of a sudden, boom, I start thriving. So I think structure is an important part of the management process, not micromanagement, structure. That's different.
I have two comments. One, I think our ratings would have been better if you'd said bad stories about your children instead of saying how good they were.
Probably so. I don't have many to share. But I could talk about my life as a preacher's kid. There's plenty of bad stories.
The second thing there is it's interesting because I think you and I have similar personalities, and I like to say I don't want structure.
Yes.
I like the ability to freestyle and to call audibles. Well, it's football season, so I'll use that.
Yep.
That's fun for me, and I feel like that's the creative side of my brain loves it too. But you are absolutely right in that structure helps. And I think about what makes me good at calling audibles, at adjusting to things, is because of the structure of use the word deadline.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Growing up in the news business, deadline is everything. And knowing that there's still a structure, right? It's still there. I think the hardest thing I've ever had to do professionally was when I left the news business for a little bit and somebody gave me a project without a timeline. Yeah. I was lost for at least a week.
Right.
I had no idea what to do.
Right.
Because there was no built-in set timeline structure for me to work with.
Right. There is some management philosophies, like there's one that's called ROWE, ROWE, which is the results-oriented work environment. And there are some significant media companies out there, like the Watt Global Medias of the world, that operate their company on the results-oriented work environment, which is they care how you do it, but you do it, you do you, as long as the end result meets the requirement that was put out there. And that always scared the tar out of me, like, wow, there's not enough structure there. But actually there is in the background, because you're not just going to say, go paint that wall, because then it may not be painted the correct color in the correct timeline, those type of things. So even in the ROWE work environment, the results-oriented work environment, where we don't necessarily care how you do it as long as you get here, there's still structure as a part of that. And even though I think people by nature would say, I don't like structure, structure's not for me, I think it would be hard for them to argue with what I have observed, and that is most salespeople that are highly successful lead moderately structured lives. Now, you might observe them running through as a bull in the china shop, so to speak, in your office or something like that. But if you really look back on the times when I've been the most successful in the advertising sales business, almost always somebody has forced me to be structured in one way, shape, or form. And, the kids out there, we see family members where the children run the house and there's a significant lack of structure. Typically, those kids don't turn out as well, as kids that are a lot more structured. So it kind of starts from the beginning and translates all the way into your work life as an adult as well.
Yeah. Learning that early is key.
The News Nirvana podcast is made possible by the generosity of Blocks Digital. Blocks Digital empowers content producers to connect with their worldwide audiences at scale and continuously transform to achieve their business goals. Contact Blocks Digital today to learn more about how they can help you thrive. Connect with them at blocksdigital.com.
I want to kind of circle it a little bit here, because again talking about management style, finding style.
Sure.
Especially back to how I started about a friend and his new manager.
Yeah.
Right, like figuring out that balance between you want to create a structure, you want to hold people accountable, but you don't want to micromanage.
Correct.
And so talk a little bit about, I guess, how you're working with people or what you've seen too, just to find that balance between accountability and structure and overbearing micromanager, because we've all had those and we all have horror stories about them.
Oh yeah. I wrote a book about it. The book was called How to Be a Manager Without Being a Jerk. And the reason that it didn't sell very well is because that would require a manager to say, I'm a jerk, and so I need a book to help me. So it didn't sell very well. But guess when it did sell? It sold really well when I allowed people to buy it anonymously and send it to their boss. Then we sold 2,000 copies anonymously sent to bosses, right? So one of the things
about and throwing a little shade.
There you go. There you go. Actually, I had a previous boss that said, "Did you write that book about me?" And I was like, "No," right? So in sales, one of the most common things, software products or things that people use is some type of CRM, some type of customer relationship management tool. Obviously, you know, the big boys out there, kind of the Salesforces of the world. And then in the media business, you've got others that are really designed for the media businesses, sort of like the magazine manager, or the media OSs of the world, or the ad orbits of the world that are designed for media. Here's what I can tell you as we talk this forward for a couple of seconds. Every significant media seller I know that's killing it, making goal, every one of them uses a CRM. Now, it's very rare to find someone that's ridiculously successful in sales that doesn't use some type of tool to keep up with that. So when you think about the three important things you should do as a salesperson: prospect like crazy, book meetings and close deals, retain customers for a lifetime, you track all that inside the CRM. Okay, so let's just play a little game. So Nick, you're my salesperson, first day on the job. I pull up the CRM right from day one. And I say, okay, so Nick, here's the deal. This isn't an option for you because serious sellers use a CRM. So let's not even argue about that. Right. But here are the three lists that you're going to work today in three separate time blocks. The first list in the CRM is going to be your prospects. The second list is going to be those that are you're active with, right? That are active customers. And then you've got your in progress people you've met with and you need to close. Then what I do is I use the CRM to guide the management. So I'm meeting with you, Nick, on a Tuesday. It's your day to meet with me, one-on-one coaching, rah, here we go. I pull up the CRM. I say, let's check your prospects. See how you're doing. We pull it up. We go down the prospect list. That's not micromanagement. That's just me doing my job.
Right.
Then we go to your in progress list and we say, how you doing with all these folks? Hey, awesome, great, cool, awesome. That's not micromanagement. That's just me doing my job. And then the actives, because we know we need to maintain our actives. You're way more likely to re-sign a past customer than get a new one. So then I want to work my retention list. So what I would say to you, to your friend, everybody is you got structure in place. Understand culture is important, but you have structure in place. But the big thing is have a management tool that helps you manage them, make it public, let them know that that's what we're doing. And it's not that you can't be funny or be jovial or kind of say things the way you want to say them or whatever. But when it all comes down to management, I have a job and my job is to manage you. I want to be cool about that. So if you show me what you're doing, I stay off your back. If you don't show me what you're doing, I expect you're not doing anything.
Right.
But then they're going to say, well, yeah, but shouldn't I be judged on my sales numbers? Well, yes, you should be judging your sales numbers. But what if your numbers could grow 25% if you better manage the lists that were in front of you? So I don't think that's micromanagement. I just think that's somebody doing their job. So to answer your question, I use CRMs to drive my management in the background. I've got a philosophy: experience, beliefs, actions. I know I need structure, and I use the CRM to drive that forward. And then we incentivize positive behaviors inside the CRM. Like, hey, if you're not making enough phone calls, let's give you a $50 Amazon card if you make 10 more this week. Things like that.
Right. I think that we're better at that, or at least I shouldn't say we. I'm just going to say me. Better at that than I used to be.
Sure.
Right? instead of harping on the negative, to be like, okay, you're doing fine, but like you said, let's get 10 more.
Right.
And
Yep.
here's a little something.
Well, and Gen Zers and millennials have grown up with structures. Like if you don't have a CRM and you hire a salesperson that's a Gen Z or a millennial, they're like, you don't have a piece of software to track this? Like you want me to keep notes in a folder? I mean, how old are you, sir? Right. So I feel like
freak people out.
there you go. I feel like it's expected. I was looking for something to write notes on today. I'm like, I don't even have anything because it's all in the computer. Right. But there's nothing wrong with this type of structure. I just want everyone to know that it's pretty uncommon for me to see managers of sales teams just say, y'all go out there and sell something. It's sort of like, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes saying, y'all run out there and somebody catch the ball. It's just not a good plan. And it's definitely not repeatable. Even if you are Patrick Mahomes, it's still not repeatable and smart to just say, y'all run out there and somebody catch the ball. It doesn't normally work out in the end.
Well, I think what you're saying, though, too, is sometimes people don't see the structure. It's the structure that allows them to, when they have to, and look, I'm in Kansas City, so I like that you brought up Mahomes.
Yeah.
But
I knew you would.
But so when they have to, Mahomes can say, hey, Kelsey, get open. I'm going to hit you.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it's the structure in the background.
Yes.
That lets them get to a point where they can call that audible, where they can go do something creative on the fly. They couldn't do that if all the other stuff weren't in place.
Right. And then if you also look at, the Mahomes of the world, the Tom Bradys of the world, neither one of them my quarterback, go Bears, to recognize that the reason they're successful, and it relates directly to this conversation, is that they embrace repeatable patterns of success and they are not random. There's nothing that they do that's random. Now, you might be led to believe there's randomness if you watch Hard Knocks or, QB1 or whatever it is on Netflix. You might be led to believe that. But the reason that Tom Brady was able to take the lovable losers of the NFL, the Buccaneers, to the Super Bowl and to a championship is because he was able to bring repeatable patterns of success, right?
Yeah.
And so in sales, the CRM allows us to identify subject lines that work, structures that work, time of days to call people that work, when they respond well. And so as much as I'm a non-structured musician kind of person, I have to make money to feed my family. And my wife is into horses, so I need to make a lot of money to feed my family. And so it's important for me to embrace repeatable patterns of success. And one of those repeatable patterns is we need a CRM to keep up with stuff. Here's the other thing, though. It's so uncommon for salespeople now to not use the CRM because most of the reps have grown up with software to guide their lives. It's a lot of times when you're dealing with older reps where they didn't have that before. So that's why I love people that are involved in structured activities. Those that are unstructured as they grow up through their parochial career in high school, they're not usually as good in sales as those that have structured type of lives normally. Not always, but normally.
How do you work with people to find their style, to find their structure that works? Again, I kind of keep circling back to that opening example of my friend who has a first-time manager as a sales manager.
Sure.
So finding their way and their style of doing things and finding a structure that they can coach and use on a consistent basis to not only hold themselves accountable, but to hold their team accountable.
Yeah. Well, you want to give people room to riff. Okay. So you want to give them the time and flexibility to be able to do that. So some of the best comedians, when they're given the proper amount of time, because, a lot of times in comedy, you're structured into like, say, 15 minutes, here's your set, right?
You want your tight 10.
Right. But when you give people time and you give them the ability to riff within a structure, they usually can do pretty darn well. So what I say is, here's the 5 or 6 things that I need you to do. Here's my expectations of those 5 or 6 things. But in between those structured moments, I want you to be you. Now, if you being you means you don't follow any structure, okay, then I've hired incorrectly. So when I'm hiring people, and your friend it's a little too late now because they're already hired, right? So they might have they hopefully got the right person on the bus. It is important for us to give people time to riff, to give them the space to breathe, to give them the space and latitude to be able to kind of do things their own way. But If you want to think about, Mr. Miyagi and, wax on, wax off, up, down, that starts with structure, right? And so you follow that structure and it's great. But in the moments where you see the Karate Kid do the big things that change, the big things that change the life. I can't show it here. That changed the life. That is where he gave him room to be Daniel. He gave him room to be that person. And that's where you find a lot of success in between the structure. But without the structure being in place and someone's riffing all the time, well, that's called, probably somebody that's broke. And that's not what we're looking for. And so I think you can give people the opportunity to be themselves as long as they fall within a certain structure. After all, it is your company and it's not theirs. And we're not running a charity. We are running a business. So
I really hope that you have the Karate Kid analogy and film clips in an upcoming coaching session.
I do. Cobra Kai. Yes.
That's
right.
perfect.
Yeah. In sales, I should probably use more Cobra Kai examples. No mercy in sales. No mercy.
I want to ask about you've used this phrase a few times today as we've talked, creating experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because we think of that as a sales thing all the time, right? Like I want to create an experience for my prospect.
Right.
To close the deal, how do I create the experience that's good for them, that gets the results they want? You're talking about creating an experience for your team and inside that
Sure.
I'm going to say office space. We don't always mean physical.
Sure. Yep.
That's interesting to me because I don't think I'd heard it that way before.
Sure. Yeah. Another good movie, by the way, Office Space. Highly recommend. Add it to my cult classic list of great movies, right?
I feel like that's what we're going to have, just a list of great movies.
Yes. I'm going to try to weave as many cult classic movies into our conversation today as possible. Well, the experiences for me are all about things that you would think would be natural, but a lot of people don't think about. For example, hey, on Friday, let's all go to the local brew pub or whatever, and I'm buying the first round, that kind of thing. It's not always, hey, if the sales are great, I'm going to buy you the first round. It's like, hey, let's go and have some beers together. Or if you're virtual, hey, let's do a virtual 30-minute happy hour. Somebody mix their favorite cocktail, on the screen. Or share an experience that you had this week. One of the biggest cultural things from an experience perspective, and I hope everybody will write this down that's listening, watching, etc. Stop wasting people's time with really bad sales meetings. One of the things that makes salespeople like myself nuts is when a sales director will call a meeting, or a boss or owner or whatever, and they use 60 minutes of all of our time to catch them up on what's going. It's a waste of my time. So one of the best experience killers, if you will, it sounds weird, best experience killer, is wasting people's time doing just silly, dumb things. I have another example. Besides wasting my time in a sales meeting that honestly, you could have got this information out of the CRM. The second thing is asking for reports that only benefit you. There's no benefit beyond anybody but you. That's just not, people just look at that like, seriously, there's better ways and better uses of my time. Asking people to do duplicate work, not smart. It's just, you just have to think about that.
Right.
But one of the biggest experiences pieces, Nick, of all this is to recognize the weight difference between positive feedback and negative feedback. See, a lot of people, what they think is that they're equal. So if I give 2 pieces of negative feedback, I should give 2 pieces of positive feedback. Boy, I'm glad you brought this up. It's so important to the experience and culture of your sales organization. They are not equally weighted. During COVID, I had an opportunity to take a psychology of leadership course from Cornell. It was so hard. I don't actually know how 19-year-olds can graduate from an Ivy League school because I'm 50 some years old and it was tough. What we learned in this executive education class is that negative feedback far outweighs positive feedback. And this is the example, and I'll be brief, that they gave. Okay, Nick, you're my team. You're on my team. And I say, Nick, you killed it today. Great job, man. See you Monday. Do you actually go to your buddy, to your spouse, whatever? Do you actually say, guess what Ryan said to me today? He said I did great. Do you actually go home and talk with your spouse about that? the likelihood is like, maybe.
Yeah.
But how about this? I say, Nick, this was not a good week for you, my man. You should have done way better this week. And next week, you better do better. Well, you're going to go home now and be like, hey, honey,
100%.
Ryan's a jerk. This guy, he like berated me right before he let me, offer Thanksgiving break or whatever. That just tells us that negative feedback far outweighs positive feedback. No matter what anybody says, I fully disagree. Negative feedback is so much more heavy than positive. So to create great experiences and as being a great manager, you've got to be looking for ways to stack the positivity deck in your favor. Leaving little Post-it notes on somebody's monitor. Hey, great job. Giving somebody a $10 Starbucks card and saying, go have coffee on me. Telling somebody to take a team member out to lunch and bring me the bill. You have to really get your positive column high so that when you deliver the negative, you're not seen as this bad, mean person. And you do need to keep track. If you keep track, you'll go, geez, I'm always negative all the time. I've got to put some more positivity in this mix, even with problem employees. Because when problem employees get to be problems, what do? You rain on the negativity.
Right.
You become a rain of negativity. What I find is you want to stop bad behavior. You got to drive positive behavior into that loop. It's called a vicious cycle. You got to make it a virtuous cycle. You got to drive positivity into it rather than rain on them negatively. It doesn't work. If you're struggling, Nick, do you like it when somebody's constantly beating on you? No.
No, I think the weight is the right term that you were using, that analogy. It weighs on you.
It does. Man, here's the thing. For Nick, for you and everybody, managing people is hard. Like, it's not an easy job. Is it rewarding beyond measure? Yes. It is. It's rewarding beyond measure. I won't even tell you the stories because I'll cry on the podcast, which maybe that would help our ratings too. But it's meaningful when at the end of somebody's career and they retire, and I just can't talk much about it because I'll get too crazy. I'm emotional about this. A woman came to me, and it doesn't matter if she's a woman, but an employee came to me and she said, "Do you remember all those little Post-it notes you left on my computer monitor?" I said, "Yeah." Okay. And she said, opened a folder and said, "I kept them all." She said, "You didn't know what I was going through. My husband was cheating on me. I was having problems with my kids. I wasn't quite making enough money to pay all of my bills," which I didn't know about, etc. She said it was those little notes that made all the difference to me. She kept them, Nick. She kept them over the course of 7 years. That's not why I wasn't hoping she'd keep them. But it's those little things in being managers. It's those little things that add up to big things. And it was so impactful. I didn't even know it. Didn't even know what was going on.
I think that is, I love that you told that story. That is a fantastic story because it's true. It's true. If we just can keep doing those little pebbles, right? Little pebbles of positive energy, whatever you want to call it, right? It makes it easier to have the conversations when you have to have the conversations that are a little more negative.
For sure.
Right, if you start raining on somebody, they know.
Yes.
They know they had a bad day and they know what they did wrong most of the time.
Right. Now, there are toxic and problem people out there.
If you throw it on there, though,
it's
really it's multiplying the weight of that.
I agree. And, being a manager is tough. I say it all the time. If being a manager was easy, everybody would want to do it, right? Now, everybody wants to do it, but they just don't understand exactly what it takes. And I've got a friend of mine in the media business that left the management business side of the media business because he just didn't like it. He wanted to be a talent and he didn't want to be a manager. And they kept putting him into management roles. And he's like, I just don't like it. And just recognize some people are not destined to be managers. Now, are you born a manager? Sort of, but you can be trained because I have been trained to be a great manager.
You have personality traits that lend themselves to make it an easier transition. But I think we all have to learn, and we've all learned from good mentors.
Yeah. And and so the biggest thing is I find that reading a lot of different management books is not necessarily helpful. What I encourage people to do is find somebody that's actively managing them, hire folks to coach you, pick a coach, stick with that coach. If you don't like what you're getting, then change coaches. Don't grab from multiple people. I also find that a lot of books are written by people that used to be a manager a long time ago. If you're dealing with millennials and Gen Zers and then Gen Xers that are now the Gen Xers are getting cranky. Okay. when you're dealing with cranky Gen Xers, right? That you really need to be talking with somebody that's actively managing people today, not reading a book that Zig Ziglar wrote or John Maxwell wrote 25 years ago. Because while some of those things might still apply, you're dealing with the different generations of people. And when you get on board with that generation and ask them for help, how do I best manage you? How do I get the best out of you? You'll be amazed, because most people think salespeople are only driven by money. Au contraire, that is not true. Sure, money's great, but you know what most people want more than money is they want PTO. They want paid time off more than money. And some people want a better parking spot. If you're going to manage people successfully, you really just need to be asking them, what do I need to do to get the very best out of you? I say it to my wife, what do I need to do to be the best husband that I can be? What do I need to do?
How can I be of service? Right.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And I think you're right. Right. Your money is a great driver for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it goes back to what else is important? That experience.
It is.
And I think a lot of people, that's a cultural shift. Again, we're coming back to that, where I think more of us now are, I don't want to hate what I do during the day. I want to feel good about all the time I spend. I want to enjoy what I do. It is an experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to love it. I think a lot of people have a little misconception that maybe I love sales. I don't love it. I mean, I really like it, but I love things that are much bigger than my job. And at the end of the day, I may not love it every day, but I enjoy it very, very much. And if you're not happy, and this goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning together, if you're on the listening today and you're not happy, it's okay for you to find something else that will make you happy. And maybe it is a side hustle, because my side hustles make me more happy than my regular job, right? Maybe it is. But just recognize that in the year 2024 and 2025, whatever, when you're listening to this, you don't have to be unhappy in your job. It's acceptable for you to switch. And it's never too late to find something that you will really love. I hope that you'll love media sales, because that's how I fed my family successfully for almost 30 years. And I've been broke at least twice. And guess what? I have a rich uncle. I didn't ask him for a penny. I should have done that actually, but I didn't ask him for a penny. Guess what got me out of those holes? Selling more ads. That's what got me out of the hole. And so I know that the media sales business can make people very successful if they just want to, embrace it and understand all those different types of things.
Structure and experience.
Yeah, I agree.
I like that. Well, as we wrap stuff up here, I'm paying attention to the clock here for you. I don't want to take too much of your time, because you have calls to make.
I do. I have calls to be on. It's okay.
Here, I want to give you a chance. I got two things left. I want to give you a chance first to talk about. I know you have another of your niche publishing conferences coming up in a few months. You do two of these a year. It's a great opportunity for people to get in the industry, to get out, talk to others, learn new things. I hope you've got a speech planned with Karate Kid clips.
Yes, for sure.
I want to see that in the next time. But what's coming up next for your next conference?
Yeah, so we're going to gather together about 400 media pros, newspaper, radio, TV, a lot of publishers in Las Vegas, April 23 to 25. And so love to have you participate in that. And that'd be really great. Love to have you there, Nick, as well. So that's nichemediaevents.com. And then also I work with a couple hundred different salespeople every month. And I love that part of my job. So if you're seeking management coaching and sales performance coaching, just reach out to me, ryandohrn.com, DOHRN. And love to be helpful. And be sure to mention that you heard about it on the News Nirvana podcast. As a matter of fact, we'll come up with some special code for your folks to get a special discount.
I like that. Let me know what that is. We're going to put that in the notes.
Yeah, that sounds good. Why don't we just make it News Nirvana? We'll make it News Nirvana, all lowercase or all uppercase, and that'll at least save people a couple $100.
There we go. Love it. News Nirvana code. Okay, the last thing, I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to make this into my structure.
Okay, cool. I like it.
Finish shows with this thing. One last final question. Give me something that you have done or you have witnessed, something you've seen or done that's awesome. Let's finish with a great story, something good you've seen.
One of the best things that I've seen recently is flying on a Delta flight. And I did get upgraded, which is awesome. And I received a postcard handwritten from the flight attendant, the lead flight attendant, that said to me, Thank you so much for flying with us today, Mr. Dohrn. We appreciate your status with us, and we want you to come back again. We want you to know how much we care about your business. It was so mind-blowing to me that somebody would go out of their way to do this, that I've just been talking about it over and over and over again. From a business perspective, you can never go wrong with thanking people and showing people that you really care about them, because retention is critical in businesses today. And so I just really thought that was absolutely awesome, that they went out of their way to take care of me. But wait, there's more. Then I get off the plane. There was somebody waiting to take me on a golf cart to my next gate. And I thought, that is unbelievably awesome. And I said, hey, are you going to do this like more often? And the guy said, no. But it was awesome in the moment.
And they were honest.
Exactly. I love that kind of awesome customer service.
That is great. And I love the handwritten card, because you don't get that anymore.
Who does that? Who does that?
One in the last 4 years that somebody has said.
Yeah. And so and for those that can see it or whatever, we did a new closet in our house. And so the lady wrote me this handwritten thank you note, and I haven't received one in 6 months. And it's right here on my desk because that's how meaningful it was. So
that is fantastic.
That's awesome.
Ryan, hey, thanks again for coming back on the show.
My pleasure. Anytime.
A little bit. And you're now my own personal therapy coach.
There we go. This is it. I'm happy to do it. And thanks so much. I really respect what you guys are doing, and I sure appreciate it very, very much.
Awesome. Thank you. That will wrap us up for this episode. We'll talk to everybody next time.
The News Nirvana podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or most any of your favorite podcast apps. The News Nirvana podcast is made possible by the generosity of Blocks Digital. Connect with them at blocksdigital.com. The News Nirvana podcast is produced by Fredcasts. Think, speak, act,